My husband's April Fool's joke made me lose our baby. The envelope arrived at 10:43 a.m. on April 1st. I was standing at the photocopier in the third-floor break room when Denise from reception called my name. Her voice had this strange quality to it, like she was trying to warn me about something but couldn't find the words. I turned around and saw a man in a dark suit holding a manila folder. He looked official. Too official. The kind of official that makes your stomach drop before you even know why. "Are you Olivia Brennan?" he asked. His voice was flat, professional, the way people sound when they're delivering bad news they've delivered 100 times before. I nodded. I couldn't speak. My hand went instinctively to my stomach, where our daughter was growing, 16 weeks along. We'd just found out it was a girl 3 days ago. We were going to name her Lily. The man handed me the folder. "You've been served," he said. Then he turned and walked away, his shoes clicking against the tile floor. Everyone in the break room was staring. Jessica from accounting, David from sales. Denise was still standing in the doorway, her hand over her mouth. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The first thing I saw was the letterhead. Divorce petition, State of Illinois. Petitioner, Nathaniel James Brennan. Respondent, Olivia Marie Brennan. The words swam in front of my eyes. I had to read them 3 times before they made sense. My husband was divorcing me. My husband, who had kissed me goodbye that morning and told me he loved me. My husband, who had spent last weekend painting the nursery yellow because we wanted something gender neutral before we knew my husband, who had held my hand during the ultrasound and cried when we heard the heartbeat for the first time. I flipped through the pages. Legal jargon. Grounds for divorce. Irreconcilable differences. Then I saw the attachment. A detailed list of complaints. Wife's inability to maintain household standards. Lack of physical attraction since pregnancy began. Regret regarding decision to have child emotional instability. And irrational behavior. Each word felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. These were things he'd said to a lawyer, things he'd documented, things he believed enough to put in writing and have delivered to me at work in front of everyone I knew. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe right. The room started spinning and I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. Denise was saying something, but I couldn't hear her over the rushing sound in my ears I thought about this morning. Nathaniel making me breakfast, scrambled eggs the way I liked them, with cheese and chives, him asking if I felt okay, if the morning sickness was better, him kissing my forehead and saying he'd see me tonight. All of it a lie. All of it a performance while he planned this. "I need to sit down," I said. My voice sounded far away, like it was coming from someone else. Jessica pulled out a chair and I collapsed into it. The papers were still in my hands. I couldn't stop reading them. Respondent has failed to meet basic expectations of partnership. Petitioner has lost romantic and physical interest in respondent. Petitioner questions his readiness for fatherhood and believes the pregnancy was a mistake. That last line broke something in me. He thought Lily was a mistake, our daughter, who we'd tried for over a year to conceive. Our daughter, whose room was already decorated. Our daughter, who I talked to every night before bed. Someone handed me water, but I couldn't drink it. My throat felt closed. I tried to call Nathaniel, but my hands were shaking too badly to unlock my phone. I tried again. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. His voice on the recording sounded happy, normal. "Leave a message and I'll get back to you." I hung up and tried again. Voicemail again. Again. Voicemail. He wasn't answering. He'd had divorce papers served to me at work and now he wouldn't answer his phone. I stood up too fast and the room tilted. Denise caught my arm. "You need to go home," she said. "Let me drive you." I shook my head. I needed to talk to Nathaniel. Needed to understand what was happening. Needed him to explain why everything I thought I knew about our life together was apparently a lie. I grabbed my purse and headed for the elevator. My boss, Frank, was coming out as I was going in. He took one look at my face and asked if I was okay. "I'm leaving," I said. I didn't wait for his response. The elevator doors closed and I was alone. I looked down at the papers still clutched in my hand. 16 pages of why my husband didn't want me anymore. 16 pages of why our marriage was over. The drive home took forever. Every red light felt like torture. I kept trying to call Nathaniel. Voicemail. 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 I left a message on the 4th try. "What is this? What are these papers? Call me back. Please call me back." My voice cracked on the last word. I was crying now, hot tears streaming down my face. Blurring my vision, I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see the road. Other drivers honked at me. I didn't care. Nothing mattered except getting home and making sense of this nightmare. When I pulled into our driveway, Nathaniel's car was there. He was home. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by terror. If he was home, that meant this was real. That meant we were going to have the conversation that would end everything. I sat in the car for a full minute, trying to compose myself, trying to stop crying, trying to be strong enough to walk in there and face whatever came next. But I couldn't stop crying, couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop thinking about those words. Regret regarding decision to have child. He regretted our daughter. I walked in through the front door. Nathaniel was in the kitchen making a sandwich. He looked up when he heard me come in and smiled. That smile. The same smile he'd given me this morning. The same smile he'd given me when I told him I was pregnant. The same smile that had made me fall in love with him 7 years ago. "How?" I asked. My voice came out as a whisper. "How could you do this?" He looked confused. "Do what?" I threw the papers on the kitchen counter. They scattered across the granite surface we'd picked out together when we renovated 2 years ago. He looked down at the papers. Then he looked back at me, and he started laughing. Actually laughing. His head tilted back, his hand on his stomach. Genuine laughter. I stood there frozen, watching my husband laugh at the dissolution of our marriage, at the destruction of our family, at papers that said he regretted our unborn daughter April Fools, he said between laughs. Oh my God, you should see your face. I got you so good. Did you really think I was divorcing you? His friend Trevor came out from the hallway, holding his phone he'd been filming. The whole thing was a prank, and they'd been filming my reaction. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process what he was saying. April Fools? This was a joke? He'd had fake divorce papers created and served to me at work, in front of all my colleagues, with reasons that shredded every insecurity I had about my pregnancy, about my body, about whether I was good enough for him. And it was a joke. Trevor was still filming, getting close-ups of my face. Nathaniel was still laughing, wiping tears from his eyes. This is going to be hilarious when we post it, Trevor said. The reactions are always the best part. Something twisted in my chest. A physical pain, sharp and sudden, like someone had reached in and grabbed my heart. I gasped and doubled over. The pain spread across my abdomen, radiating out in waves. Nathaniel's laughter stopped. Liv? His voice changed, concern replacing amusement. Are you okay? I tried to answer, but another wave of pain hit me and I couldn't breathe. This wasn't normal. This wasn't stress or panic. This was something wrong. Something deeply, terribly wrong. I looked down and saw blood running down my leg, soaking through my pants, pooling on our kitchen floor. Nathaniel's face went white. He dropped the sandwich he'd been holding. Trevor stopped filming. Oh my God, Nathaniel said. Oh my God. Liv, call 911, I managed to say. The pain was getting worse, sharper, like knives inside me. Call 911 right now. Nathaniel was frozen. Staring at the blood, Trevor was the one who pulled out his phone and made the call. I sank to the floor, my back against the kitchen cabinets. My hands went to my stomach instinctively, trying to protect Lily, trying to keep her safe even though I already knew, that something terrible was happening. The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. They found me on the kitchen floor, Nathaniel holding my hand, both of us covered in blood. They asked questions I couldn't focus on. How far along are you? When did the bleeding start? Any pain? Any cramping? Yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. They loaded me onto a stretcher and carried me out to the ambulance. I could see our neighbors watching from their yards. Mrs. Chen from next door had her hand over her mouth. The ambulance doors closed and we were moving, sirens wailing, Nathaniel sitting beside me looking like he might throw up. At the hospital, everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. Nurses rushing around, machines beeping, someone putting an IV in my arm, a doctor with kind eyes telling me they needed to do an ultrasound, needed to see what was happening. I already knew what was happening. I could feel it. The emptiness. The absence. The place where Lily had been growing, where her heart had been beating, was silent now. The ultrasound confirmed it. I'm so sorry, the doctor said. There's no heartbeat. We need to take you into surgery right away. You're experiencing a placental abruption. It's very serious. I turned my head to look at Nathaniel. He was crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones from laughing at his prank. I'm sorry. He kept saying, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't think. I'm so sorry. The nurses were wheeling me toward the operating room. A different doctor was explaining the procedure, the risks, the recovery. I wasn't listening. All I could think about was Lily, our daughter who we'd never meet, our daughter who'd never sleep in the yellow nursery, our daughter who'd never take her first steps or say her first words or graduate from high school or get married. All of that, gone, because of a prank. The surgery took 2 hours. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was emptiness. Physical emptiness where Lily had been. Emotional emptiness where my future had been. I looked down at my stomach, still rounded from pregnancy, but now just an empty shell. My mother was sitting beside the bed, holding my hand. She'd been crying. Where's Nathaniel? I asked. My voice was hoarse from the breathing tube they'd used during surgery. She hesitated. He's in the waiting room. Do you want to see him? I closed my eyes. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know anything anymore. The doctor came in an hour later. She was young, maybe in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a bun. She explained that the placental abruption had been severe, that they'd had to perform a D&C to remove the remaining tissue, that I'd lost a significant amount of blood, that I was lucky to be alive lucky. The word felt obscene. There was nothing lucky about any of this. She asked if I had any questions. Just one, I said. Could stress have caused this? Could a severe emotional shock have triggered the abruption? She chose her words carefully. Extreme stress can be a contributing factor, she said. In combination with other risk factors, yes, it's possible. I asked to see Nathaniel. My mother went to get him and returned a moment later with my husband, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 6 hours. His eyes were red and swollen. His shirt was still stained with my blood. He stood at the foot of my bed, not coming closer, like he was afraid I'd break if he touched me. I'm so sorry, he said again. Liv, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this would happen. I thought you'd just be mad for a minute and then we'd laugh about it. I thought it would be funny. The words hung in the air between us, inadequate and pathetic. I stared at him, this man I'd loved for 7 years, this man I'd married, this man who I'd created a child with, this man who'd thought my devastation would be entertaining content. Did you really think, I said slowly, that telling me you regretted our baby would be funny? That making me believe you wanted a divorce would make me laugh? What part of that sounds funny to you? He had no answer. He just stood there, crying silently. My mother was watching him with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Pure hatred. Get out, she said. Her voice was low and dangerous. Get out of this room right now. He left. I asked my mother to bring me my phone. She hesitated, like she wanted to protect me from whatever I was about to do, but she brought it anyway. I had 47 missed calls, texts from friends who'd heard what happened, messages from colleagues asking if I was okay, a voicemail from my boss telling me to take all the time I needed, and notifications from social media. I opened Instagram with shaking hands. Trevor had posted the video. He'd actually posted it. The caption read, "Epic April Fool's prank on my boy's wife. Her reaction is priceless. We got her so good." The video showed everything. Me coming home, me throwing the papers on the counter, my face as Nathaniel laughed, my confusion, my pain, and then, horrifyingly, it showed me collapsing. It showed the blood. It showed Nathaniel's panic. It showed Trevor still filming even as my life fell apart. The comments were already rolling in. Some people thought it was hilarious. Some were concerned. Some were calling it fake, staged for views. Nobody knew the truth yet. Nobody knew that our daughter had died while the camera was rolling. I called the hospital's patient advocate. I needed that video taken down. Needed it gone before more people saw it. Before it spread further. Before the worst moment of my life became entertainment for strangers. The advocate said she'd contact their legal team, see what could be done. Then I called a lawyer. Not for the video. For divorce. Real divorce this time. My mother tried to talk me out of it. You're in shock, she said. You're grieving. Don't make any permanent decisions right now. But I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. My marriage was over the moment Nathaniel thought my pain was funny. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Nathaniel tried to visit multiple times. I refused to see him. My mother and father took shifts sitting with me, making sure I was never alone, running interference with anyone who tried to get through. Friends came and went, bringing flowers and cards with condolences that felt empty. What do you say when someone loses a baby to a prank gone wrong? Sorry for your loss? Sorry your husband's an idiot? Sorry your life imploded on camera? There were no right words. Everyone knew it. Everyone felt the wrongness of the situation. On the second day, a police officer came to my room. His name was Detective Reeves, and he wanted to ask me some questions about what happened. Not about the miscarriage itself, but about Nathaniel's actions. Had he known I was pregnant when he planned the prank? Yes. Had he known about my anxiety regarding the pregnancy? Yes, I'd been seeing a therapist for it. Had he ever done anything like this before? I thought about all the pranks over the years. Harmless ones, mostly plastic wrap on the toilet, fake spider in the shower. But this was different. This had crossed a line so far that the line wasn't even visible anymore. The detective took notes and said he'd be in touch. He didn't say what charges might be filed, if any. I didn't care about charges. I cared about the fact that my daughter was dead, and nothing could bring her back. After he left, I finally let myself cry. Really cry. Not the shocked tears from the hospital, but deep, wrenching sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside. My mother held me and cried too. We stayed like that for an hour. Mourning Lily. Mourning the future we'd never have. Mourning the innocence we'd lost. When I was discharged, I went to my parents' house instead of home. I couldn't go back to that kitchen. Couldn't see the spot where I'd collapsed. Couldn't sleep in the bed I'd shared with Nathaniel. Couldn't walk past the nursery with its yellow walls and empty crib. My father had already gone to the house and packed me a bag. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the ultrasound photos I'd kept on my nightstand. He'd also taken down every picture of Nathaniel. I hadn't asked him to do that, but I was grateful I couldn't look at my husband's face without seeing him laughing at my pain. The video had gone viral. 2 million views in 3 days. Trevor had finally taken it down after facing massive backlash, but it was too late. People had downloaded it, reposted it, dissected every frame. True crime. YouTubers were making analysis videos. Reddit threads were arguing about whether Nathaniel could be charged with anything the court of public opinion had convicted him. But that didn't change the fact that Lily was gone. That didn't change the fact that I was empty. That didn't change anything that mattered. My lawyer called on day 5. Her name was Diana Foster, and she had a reputation for being ruthless. Good. I wanted ruthless. She'd filed for an emergency restraining order against Nathaniel, and it had been granted he wasn't allowed within 500 feet of me. She'd also drafted divorce papers. Real ones this time. She wanted to include allegations of emotional abuse, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligence. Can we prove negligence? I asked. She paused. That's complicated, she said. But we can certainly make the argument that his actions directly led to your miscarriage, that his reckless disregard for your well-being during a vulnerable time caused irreparable harm. I signed the papers. My hand didn't shake. I felt nothing. That scared me more than anything. I should feel angry, should feel sad, should feel something, but there was just numbness, just the hollow space where Lily had been, where my marriage had been, where my life had been. My therapist said it was normal, said it was my brain protecting me from more pain than I could handle, said eventually the feelings would come back and I'd have to process them. I wasn't sure I wanted them to come back. The numbness was easier. Nathaniel tried to contact me through friends, through family, through social media. Every message was some variation of, "I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Please talk to me. Please give me a chance to explain." What was there to explain? He'd thought my devastation would be funny. He'd thought humiliating me in front of my colleagues would make good content. He'd thought watching me believe my marriage was ending would be entertaining. And our daughter had paid the price for his entertainment. There was nothing to explain. Nothing that would make any of it okay. On day 8, My best friend Alicia showed me something on her phone. She didn't want to, tried to talk herself out of it, but ultimately decided I needed to know it was a Reddit post from 3 days before April 1st. The username was Nat, the Great 88, Nathaniel's gaming handle. The post was titled, Epic April Fool's Prank on Pregnant Wife. Need advice. He'd laid out the entire plan, the fake divorce papers, having them served at her work, the cruel reasons he'd include. He'd asked for feedback on making it more realistic, more devastating, more likely to get a strong reaction for the video. The comments were overwhelmingly negative. Dude, don't do this. She's pregnant. This is cruel, not funny. One person wrote, my sister had a miscarriage from stress. This is dangerous. You could seriously hurt her. Another, your wife is going to divorce you for real. This isn't a prank. It's abuse. There were dozens of comments warning him, telling him this was a terrible idea, begging him not to do it. And Nathaniel had responded to a few. You guys are being dramatic. She'll be mad for like 5 minutes and then we'll laugh about it. Women are tougher than you think. She can take a joke. I read through the entire thread 3 times. He'd been warned. Multiple people had explicitly told him this could cause a medical emergency. Someone had specifically mentioned miscarriage. And he'd dismissed every single concern. He'd done it anyway because he thought he knew better, because he thought a good video was worth the risk, because he thought my pain would be entertaining enough to justify any potential consequences. I handed Alicia her phone back. Send that to my lawyer, I said. She needs to see this. Diana called me 2 hours later. This changes everything, she said. Her voice had an edge of excitement to it, the way lawyers get when they find the smoking gun. This shows premeditation. This shows he was explicitly warned about the potential medical consequences and chose to proceed anyway. This isn't just a prank gone wrong. This is willful negligence at minimum, possibly reckless endangerment. I can use this. She filed an amended complaint, added more charges, sent copies to the police, sent copies to the media. The story exploded again. Husband warned not to prank pregnant wife. Does it anyway. Causes miscarriage. It had everything people love to hate. A villain. A victim. A tragedy that could have been prevented. Nathaniel released a statement through his own lawyer. I never intended for anyone to get hurt. I deeply regret my actions and the consequences they caused. I'm seeking counseling, and hope that someday Olivia can forgive me. The statement felt empty. Meaningless. Words on paper from someone trying to save his reputation. The comments on his social media were brutal. People calling him a murderer. Calling for him to be arrested. Calling for justice for Lily and for me. Some of it felt good. Validating. Most of it just felt like noise. The funeral home called on day 12. They needed me to come in and make arrangements. I hadn't thought about this part. Hadn't thought about the fact that I'd need to plan a funeral for a daughter I'd never gotten to hold. My mother came with me. We sat in a small room with soft lighting and tissues on every surface, while a man with a gentle voice walked us through options. Casket or cremation. Service or no service. I couldn't make decisions. Couldn't think. My mother squeezed my hand. We'll do a small private service, she told the funeral director. Just family. Just us to say goodbye. The service was on a gray morning that matched how I felt inside. Just my parents, my brother, my grandmother. Nathaniel's parents came, which surprised me. His mother hugged me and cried and apologized over and over. She said she'd raised her son better than this. Said she didn't understand how he could have done something so cruel. Said she'd always love me even if her son and I couldn't fix this. His father stood back, looking uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I appreciated them being there. It wasn't their fault their son was an idiot. We buried Lily in a cemetery on the north side of town. There was a section for infants and children. Small headstones with angels and teddy bears carved into them. Her headstone was simple. Lily Rose Brennan. Forever loved. Forever missed. The priest said some words about God's plan and heaven and peace. I didn't believe any of it. There was no plan that included my daughter dying because of a prank. There was no peace in any of this. There was just loss and anger and the unfairness of it all. We each placed a flower on the tiny casket before they lowered it into the ground. I couldn't watch. I turned away and my mother held me while I fell apart. 2 weeks after the miscarriage, Nathaniel was arrested. The charges were reckless endangerment and involuntary manslaughter. Diana called to tell me, said the Reddit post had been key evidence. Said the prosecutor was confident they could prove he'd acted with reckless disregard for my safety and well-being. Said he was being held on $50,000 bail. I felt nothing. The numbness was still there, protecting me. Nathaniel's family posted bail within hours. He was released with an ankle monitor and strict instructions not to contact me. Not that he could, anyway. The restraining order was still active. The media attention was overwhelming. News trucks camped outside my parents' house. Reporters calling my phone at all hours. Someone tracked down the hospital staff and tried to get them to comment on my condition. Diana handled most of it, releasing statements on my behalf, declining interview requests, threatening legal action against anyone who harassed me. But some things got through. Tabloid articles speculating about my marriage. Think pieces about prank culture and its consequences. Op-eds about the dangers of doing anything for content. My tragedy had become a cultural conversation. I started going to a support group for pregnancy loss. It met every Thursday evening in the basement of a church downtown. The first time I went, I almost turned around and left. I didn't want to sit in a circle and share my feelings with strangers. Didn't want to hear their stories of loss and grief. Didn't want to be part of this club nobody wanted to join. But I stayed. I sat in a metal folding chair and listened to other women talk about their babies, about the futures that had been stolen, about the pain that never really went away. When it was my turn, I couldn't speak. Just cried. They understood. Nobody pushed. Nobody judged. Nathaniel's trial was scheduled for November, 6 months away. Diana said we needed to be prepared for a long fight, said his lawyers would argue that he couldn't have known his prank would cause a medical emergency, that the miscarriage wasn't his fault, just a tragic coincidence, that you can't charge someone with a crime for making a joke, even a terrible one. She was confident we'd win, but trials were unpredictable. Juries were unpredictable. We needed to be ready for any outcome. I told her I just wanted it over. Wanted to never have to think about Nathaniel again. Wanted to move on with whatever was left of my life. The divorce proceedings moved faster than the criminal trial. Nathaniel didn't contest anything, didn't fight for the house or the cars or any of our shared assets. His lawyer said he just wanted it done, wanted to give me whatever I needed to move forward. Diana was suspicious, said nobody gave up that easily without some ulterior motive, but I didn't care about his motives. I signed every paper she put in front of me. The divorce was finalized in August. 3 days before what would have been Lily's due date, I was no longer Olivia Brennan. I took back my maiden name, Olivia Winters. A new name for a new life I didn't want. On what should have been Lily's birthday, I went to the cemetery alone. I brought yellow roses, her color, and sat beside her grave for hours. I talked to her about everything. About how I'd imagined her first birthday party, about the cake I would have made, about the photos we would have taken, about how she should be here, crying and laughing and making a mess with frosting, about how sorry I was that I couldn't protect her, about how angry I was at her father for taking her away from me, about how I'd never stop loving her, never stop missing her, never stop wondering who she would have become. The trial started on November 3rd. I had to testify on the second day. Diana prepared me, walking me through the questions the prosecutor would ask, the questions Nathaniel's defense attorney would ask, the things I should and shouldn't say. But nothing prepared me for actually sitting in that witness box, looking out at the courtroom, seeing Nathaniel at the defense table avoiding my eyes. The prosecutor asked me to describe April 1st, to walk the jury through every moment from when I received the papers to when I woke up after surgery. I did. I made sure they understood exactly what Nathaniel had done and exactly what it had cost. The defense attorney was a woman in her 50s named Margaret Whitmore. She spoke softly, like she genuinely cared about my well-being, but her questions were designed to tear me apart. Isn't it true that you had a history of anxiety? Isn't it true that your pregnancy was high risk for other reasons? Isn't it true that placental abruptions can happen randomly, without any triggering event? Isn't it true that you can't definitively say my client's actions caused your miscarriage? Diana objected to most of it. The judge sustained some objections and overruled others. I answered as honestly as I could. Yes, I had anxiety. No, my pregnancy wasn't high risk for any other reason. Yes, abruptions can happen randomly. No, I couldn't definitively prove causation, but the timing was impossible to ignore. The medical expert testimony was crucial. The prosecutor brought in Dr. Sharon Hale, an OB/GYN with 30 years of experience. She explained that extreme emotional distress can trigger contractions, increase blood pressure, and in vulnerable individuals, cause placental abruption. She said that given the timing, the severity of my stress response, and the immediate onset of symptoms, it was more likely than not that Nathaniel's prank had directly caused my miscarriage. The defense brought in their own expert who said correlation doesn't equal causation, that there was no way to prove the prank caused the abruption, that I could have had an abruption that day regardless of what happened. The jury looked confused. Science was failing us, just like everything else had. The Reddit thread was entered as evidence. The prosecutor read several comments aloud, including the ones that specifically warned Nathaniel about potential medical emergencies. She asked the jury to consider whether a reasonable person, having been warned of the risks, would have proceeded with the prank. She asked them to consider whether Nathaniel's desire for content outweighed his responsibility to his pregnant wife. She asked them to consider what message it would send if he faced no consequences for his actions. The defense argued that Reddit comments weren't credible medical advice, that Nathaniel couldn't be expected to know better than trained doctors, that tragedy didn't equal criminality. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the front row with my parents and Alicia, watching as my life was dissected and debated and discussed, watching as Nathaniel sat there looking remorseful but never once meeting my eyes. His parents testified on his behalf, said he was a good person who'd made a terrible mistake, said he'd been going to therapy, said he'd never forgive himself. His friends testified too, tried to paint him as the victim, someone whose life had been ruined by one bad decision. Trevor, who'd filmed everything, took the fifth on most questions. His lawyer had advised him not to incriminate himself. Smart. The closing arguments happened on a Friday afternoon. The prosecutor spoke first, summarizing 3 weeks of testimony, reminding the jury of Nathaniel's choices and their consequences. She showed them photos of Lily's grave, showed them my medical records, asked them to imagine being me, believing your marriage was over, your husband regretted your unborn child, all while colleagues watched and cameras rolled. Asked them to imagine what that level of betrayal and humiliation would do to a person. Asked them to hold Nathaniel accountable for choosing content over compassion. The defense argued reasonable doubt, argued that tragedy and crime weren't the same thing, argued for mercy. The jury deliberated for 2 days. I spent that time in a hotel near the courthouse, unable to eat or sleep or focus on anything. Diana kept saying she felt good about it, but I couldn't let myself hope. Hope felt dangerous. Hope felt like it would break me if the verdict went the wrong way. On Monday afternoon, we got the call. The jury had reached a decision. We rushed to the courthouse. The courtroom was packed. Media filled every available seat. We filed in and took our places. The judge asked the jury foreman to read the verdict. I held my mother's hand so tightly I thought I might break her fingers. On the count of reckless endangerment, guilty. On the count of involuntary manslaughter, guilty. The courtroom erupted, people cheering, people crying. The judge banged her gavel for order. I sat frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. Guilty. Both counts. Nathaniel's face went white. His lawyer was already preparing to file an appeal. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks from now and dismissed the jury. Diana was hugging me. My mother was hugging me. Alicia was crying. This was justice. This was accountability. This was Lily's life meaning something. Sentencing day came quickly. The prosecutor asked for the maximum, 5 years for reckless endangerment, 10 years for involuntary manslaughter, to be served consecutively. The lawyer asked for probation and community service, arguing that prison time wouldn't serve any purpose, that her client had suffered enough. I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I stood at the podium and looked directly at Nathaniel. For the first time since the trial began, I told him exactly what he'd taken from me. Not just Lily, but my sense of safety, my ability to trust, my belief that people I love won't hurt me for entertainment. I told him that I'd never be the same person I was before April 1st, that he'd killed 2 people that day, our daughter, and the version of me who believed in him. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison followed by 5 years of probation. It wasn't the maximum, but it was something. It was acknowledgement that what he'd done was criminal, not just cruel. It was a message that content doesn't justify consequences. As they led Nathaniel away in handcuffs, he finally looked at me, mouthed the words, "I'm sorry I looked away." His apologies meant nothing. They never had. They never would. Outside the courthouse, Diana made a statement to the press. This verdict sends a clear message. Actions have consequences. Pranks that harm have consequences. Choosing virality over humanity has consequences. I stood beside her, saying nothing, letting her words speak for both of us. 3 years later, I stood at Lily's grave with flowers and a letter I'd written but would never send. I'd survived, rebuilt my life piece by piece, found a new job, a new apartment, a new therapist who specialized in trauma, started dating again, carefully, with walls up, but hope cautiously returning. I'd never forget April 1st, never stop missing Lily, never stop wondering who she would have been. But I'd learned to live with the loss, to carry it without letting it crush me. Nathaniel was released last month. I didn't attend the parole hearing, didn't need to. His punishment was over, but mine never would be. I placed the flowers on Lily's headstone, touched the cold marble, and walked away into a life I'd built from ruins. A life where I was whole enough, strong enough, and finally free.